Hey people, I'm going to start this video with a share of this in case I forget to tell you at the end. But this is the Hebrew spelling of Hebrew here, as in the Hebrew language. But this is a O. You see it here, it's called the iron, O. And they say it's silent in some schools, so it would just be read the B, bet. Is here, bet, is the B. And then the R-I-T, oh, Brit. And if the O is silent, that is just Brit. You can see here's the R here, and the T is here, and then the Yod, the I, J, or Y, is the Brit. B-R-I-T, oh, Brit. The B is missing a little dot in here. And so it's actually two different letters. You know, with the dot it's called bet, and without the dot it's called vet, and it's a V. And that's why in the Latin language and the English you see a lot of words are mixed up with the B and the V. And so that would read in English as in over it. So this is also the word for covenant. When God made a covenant with his people, it was a Brit, B-R-I-T, of covenant, the Brit. So when he made a covenant with the Hebrews, he made a Brit over it. He made a Brit over it. You can see there's a bunch of different words, but this is what they all have in common, is this B-R-I-T. For covenant. So I'm going to start with an extra B in Brit, and the Brit, the Britics, the Britic. But that's what they all have in common, is this B-R-I-T. And this is where your word liberate come from, you know, liberty, and is your Latin word for books. The liber, library, a book, comes from Brit, the covenant of the Brit. Of the Hebrew, the Brit, oh Brit, Brit, oh Brit. You see here in 2 Samuel 3:13, you know, a covenant is Brit, B-R-I-T, and this is this A-T-K word starting with A actually read backwards. This is K-E-T-A, kata, as in according to, kata, according to Brit. And I know you're thinking that, but Brit, you know, that's what we call people that are from Britain. He's a Brit. But I'm fixing to get all that straightened out in this old book here in this English. And this is an old encyclopedia, and I'll leave links to all these old books. And this is one of my main ones to go to. This is 2 parts. It's a huge book. And it's called the Cyclopedia. The Oran Universal Dictionary of Arts and Sciences, and it's from 1728, and obviously this was before the language change. And it says here English, or the English tongue, the language spoke by the people of England, and with some variation by those of Scotland. The English is of Gothic or Teutonic extraction. This was the root or stock upon which several other dialects have been since grafted, particularly the Latin and French. So the English is of Gothic or Teutonic extraction, saying the English come from the Gothic or Teutonic, you know, the same language. And so Teutonic, T-E-U, is like T-E-W. It means to shape. To shape something is to it. And it's talking about the shapes of the letters have the picture meanings. And then the tonic means to make a tone out of them, to give them a sound. And so this language, this is the language of the original Hebrew. It's Teutonic. It's the original language. And and it means it has a shape and it also has a sound. And so you can use the shapes meaning of the letters to define the words. The language anciently spoke in our island was the British language, British. Ish means of the lichens. Brit, the covenant, the Hebrew like ish. Like Hebrew, like Oberit, like Brit, like covenant, or the Welsh, which was common to the Britons and Gawds, and which still subsists in more or less purity in the Principality of Wales, the country of Cornwall, and the islands of Highlands of Scotland, Ireland, and some provinces of France, particularly Britain. As the Roman Empire extended itself towards the western parts of Europe, came to take the Gaul and Britain, the Roman tongue became propagated there with all the edicts and etc. relating to the public affairs being designedly wrote in that language. These old F's and S, you have to watch them closely. They're real close to the same, but the little cross on the S will be smaller than the F. You can see here, this is a sense, and this is a several. The Latin, however, tis, it is. You see this a lot in the old Hebrew. It is. Certain it never got so much ground or prevailed so far in England as in Lombardy, in Spain, and the Gauls. The Latin, that's why it's Latin so close to the Italian and Spanish language, particularly on accounts of its great distance from Rome. And so other old books I've read, older than this, they say that England was the country and British was the language. Not Britain was the country and English was the language. This is something that has been changed between that two times. And this is the same book, part 2. I'll leave you the 2 links to these 2 books. And it says Teutonic is something belonging to the two tones, an ancient people of Germany inhabiting chiefly along the coast of the German Ocean. The Teutonic language is the ancient language of the Germany, the same as the Celtic. The Teutonic or German is ranked among the mother tongues. So they've changed the German language since then too. What caused me to look this up, I was reading the Bible and I guess Genesis 11, I think, talk about the Tower of Babel and the people had one language. It was such a problem for God. He had to come down and change the language. And I got to thinking about it. Well, they didn't have printing press and newspapers, and they didn't have telephones, TVs. Why was one language such a problem with God? And that's when I figured out that they had the Bible. The Bible had already been written, and that's why the language had to be changed. And so that's why I started to study the ancient Hebrew Bible. I knew there was something missing there. I knew something wasn't right. And I also kind of figured, if this Bible had been around that long, my ancestors wasn't bullshitting. They was learning how to read this. And so I kind of had a feeling that a lot of these words was the same. But you see, when it says to minister as a priest in place of his father and put on clothes, the garments, linen. But it's the of Khan, L means of, K-E-N, of Khan, T-H-T, that. Starts with the A and it reads backwards, and it's wife, W-I-V-E, and it means who in power. Not the father, but the wife, who in power. To lavish, L-V-shin, S-H, to lavish to. In B-G-D-I, in gaudy, Lavish and gaudy. Look it up. It doesn't mean put on clothes. It means drape yourself lavishly, expensively, lavish. In gaudy. B means in gaudy. In the most gaudiest clothes you can find. And you look over here in Psalms 93:1, and you, they call this Yahweh, but it's you, Y-E-W, you milk, you from like gout. Gout, with majesty is gout. Gout has become known as the disease of royalty. And it's because they were eating too rich. You know, if you got gout, your doctor's going to, first he's going to tell you, get off the red meat, you know. If you get it real bad, you won't be able to eat fish anymore. You'll be stuck with just a couple of vegetables. The gout has been called disease of kings because of European royalty appears to have been disproportionately affected by the disease. Gout, from like gout, lavish, lavish. His clothes, his coat, lavish, lavish you. The royalty with majesty, the gout, lavish, lavish you. And you see a whole bunch of these words for clothed here. And this is what they have in common, the lavish. Lavish in the lavishes. The lavish income. Et, lavish, LBS. The LBS, the lavish. Lavish, lavish. Lavish in gaudies. Lavish in gaudies is what you would call this. This isn't to put on clothes. This is to lavish in gaudies. You know, try to look like a rich clown. Let everybody know that you are God's chosen people, and He has lavished you in gaudies. So this is where your word God come from. You know, people would be chilling out, and here would come, oh gaudy, oh God, here comes gaudy. So when I'm reading this, I'll often see this, they call it a M, a final M, and it looks more like the letter S. You see it here too. And the reason for it is this tack has you read the next word backwards and forwards. So instead of O-M or O-S, it's now M at the front, M-O, and then this way it reads as a S. It's called a final letter. And you see it down here in this list of final letters. It's just these 5 letters. And it's called that mem suffix, a final letter. And it gives a different number value. But it gives it a different meaning. And if you look at it, you know, all the final letters, if you look at them, all they did was drop the tail down. They look like the other letters, except they just drop the tail down. Final none, they just drop this little tail straight down. On this final ka, they just drop the tail down. But if you look at this M, it doesn't look nothing like that final M. The final M looks more like this S with the tail changed just a little bit here. You know, it looks more like the S here. And that's why I pronounce it as a S. And it still means from, but it's pronounced as a S. From as, to call from as. And from likes, L-K-S, not L-K-M. L-K-S, the likes. And it still means from, to like from. And you see it here. You see it here in this older print here. This is an S here. And the only time it looks like our S we use now is when it comes on the end of a word. It looks like this. But it's pronounced S, but it actually means M. It means from still. The Gaul from. The Gauls are from Gaul. The Britons are from, S is from Britain. The Briton from. The Briton from is the Britons. And so they were still using it here. You know, this is still a Teutonic language. If you understand how the Teutonic words, you can get the the diction out of the spelling. The diction is in the spelling. So let me show y'all something cool I found here in 2 Samuel 3. I was reading this story, and you can see the end of this word, O-B-I-R, just like the Old Brit, the Hebrew. Except it's missing the dot in there, so it's O-V-I-R, over. And I read the rest of this story when I got down here, so I knew exactly what this word was when I got to it. And I read this without any of the picture meanings. Usually, I read this as em, them, milk it, or when I see the m, I'll read it as from, in, it. But I read all this with nothing but the pronunciation. I didn't add any picture meanings, and it was reading pretty easy. I have to go back and look at some of the beginning of the Bible. Maybe this was later on in the language. But this said lay, L-E, lay over, and it was called to transfer. And so the difference between a layover and a transfer, if you fly into an airport and you have a layover, you're not necessarily changing planes. Sometimes they just fuel that plane up and you'll get back on it, except there'll be some different people on there. Those different people, those are the ones that transferred. But all you did was lay over. If you're riding a bus, sometimes you got a north-south and east-west bus, and you pay that north-south bus, and when you get off, you get a transfer, and so you don't have to pay to get on your east-west bus, And that's a transfer. To transfer something over. And they're trying to say this to transfer the kingdom from the house, but no, it was a layover. And I knew this from the rest of the story because it was talking about a boat ride, and he was at a layover. A layover is a vehicle stops with passengers possibly changing vehicles. Only one vehicle is going in that direction, and so some of the people lay over and some people transfer. And so the ones waiting, that's a layover. Unless you're in the air, then a transfer is considered to be a layover. So maybe they had planes back then. But it all depends, which boat's going on. Sometimes you're waiting on a boat that's going in your direction, and that would be a transfer. But if you're waiting on a boat for them to come get on your boat to continue on, that would be a layover. And to lay over them milk means they're real slow about it. They're milking the time at the port before they got to get back on the boat. So let me show you something that's really cool. I showed before that the word for years and the numbers, they always change. And you got like 20, 30, 35 different words here for years. And the main two are the SNE and the SNI. And that's the sun and the sign. And so I figured out what that was all about. And then all the words for the numbers, they do the same thing. There's a bunch of different words that they'll give number 8. And so, I told you where when you're 40 years old, it says from job resign. The sign was the years, and the from jabra is the word for 40 backwards because it starts with an A. Ben, and then reads backwards. Ben, the names mention. And so when you're 8 years old, Ben, the names mention. You start hearing about the names. And when you're 31 years old, you are useless as watch it, son. When you're 31 years old, you're useless to watch it, son. You got something else on your mind. You're not watching. So 1 year old, when you're 1 year old, you watch it, son. And so when you're 12 years old, you're 2 in 10 years. And this Ben, the same word, sometimes I say it means son. But Ben, and then backwards and forwards, Ben might stays. This is where that, it's an M in this direction, and it's an S on the way back. Ben might stays as reason. And so when you're 14 is when you get your first job. Like the 40 is from job, 14 is from the job too. But when you're 55 is which misses which mission. And so if you started your job at 14 and you worked 40 years, you were happy that first year off, but that next year you're 55 years old and now you are which misses which mission. You're not out on the mission anymore. And so when you're reading your King James, it's talked about, they use witchcraft. Witchcraft is something like winches. Up on the front of your four-wheel drive truck, if you get stuck in the mud and you hook it up to a tree and pull yourself out, they would say, he's using witchcraft. Winches, the verb W-N-C-H-S, winches. And if in doing evil you lose what? Hero. That's E-He-R-O. Lose what? Hero. He done been doing evil. And the reason the story starts in the Garden of Eden is that's where everything began. Everything began, B-G-N. And when you're 2 years old, and when he became 2 years, in milk to waste is signs. You see where the years changes up here. It's in eyes, ing, signs. In milk to waste his signs. When he's 2 years old, he starts wasting that milk. It's time to wean him. And when you're 15 years old, it comes as reason. And at 18 is the wage. How they insummon, and that's why 8 changes up so much. How they insummon is reason of milk. Milk is the stuff that you try to get without having to buy the cow. And that's what's going on when you're 18. And so the reason that these people had went to work at the age of 14, their first job was 14, is because at 14, from reading this book, they were smarter than most people get their entire life these days. And here's at 40 years. It starts with an A, so it reads backwards. M is from J-O-B-R-A-S-N-E, from job resign. And at 85 years old, you're ready to die, so it comes to summon his son. Call your son up. Hey, I'm fixing to die. Pass it over. And severely, 20 years is in his fee has risen. You done got good at your job and raised your fee at 20 years. And all these people that they say lived hundreds of years, they got a whole bunch of words for 100 too. But this is from aught. And so souls from aught is just 3 from aught. And so it from aught is just 30. It would be 3 and then from aught. And if it has a dash after the souls, then it would read 2 backwards first, 2 from aught, and then that would give you double zeros. That would be 300. But nobody lived 300 years and 900 years. They got that all mixed up. And if you're 33 years old, nobody wants to abduct you because your souls is useless. And here's a useful one. Of the 400 year is the warble from out sun. So maybe every 400 years we get a warble from out the sun. And so this is why they don't circumcise the Jews until they're 13. I was reading this somewhere else. 13 years is the souls as reason who cull to. When they clipped your foreskin, they culled your soul. So the covenant is the Brit. Over it would be here. This is the Brit over it. And so if you're running around looking like this, that's a dead giveaway that you don't have a clue as to how to read this. And if you're running around claiming to be God's chosen people and you're wearing a target on you, you know, people aren't going to like that. They're not going to appreciate that. So it seems like there was a vacancy, and these people done figured out that, oh, nobody wants to be God's chosen people. The Brits figured out that, hey, they was a target. They living on that little bitty island over there. And they figured out, oh, we better quit claiming to be God's chosen people. And so it seems like that these Khan, as a priest of Khan, man, K-E-N, of the Khan, seem like they got the whole world conned into believing they're God's chosen people and they can read this. But I know for a fact they can't, because I can. And if you look in your King James Version, you know, they're going to give this one word, K-E-N, all of these extra words to try to make sense out of it. Because when you read it from here, it really don't make sense, because they're trying to keep the meanings the same, although they change them up because they just can't do it. Because these words here were mistranslated from the Latin. The Latin was mistranslated from the Greek, and the Greek was totally to cover this book up. Because this is the book of power here. But sometimes, you know, the priests are the connies, the dogs, the connies, the con man, the cannies. And if anybody's asking my religion, I've got no religion. I've never had it. The story hasn't made sense to me the first time I heard it when I was 6 years old. I've never believed it. I just had to get some years on me before I had to get really thinking about it and figure out that there really was a reason why people fought and died for this book, and why people have been trying to keep this book alive, and why the church has been trying to burn it all these years. You know, there was a lot more to it, and I understand all about it now. And I'm going to spend the rest of my years trying to teach people how to read it again, because it seems like, you know, none of the good people can read it anymore. Only the con men read it now. And I'm going to try to change that. I think this is one of my best works. I think everybody should share this. I want to see about 2,000 views by the end of the week. All right. Good day. Share this.